Labour came to power promising stability, sound money, and a return to economic growth. What Britain got instead was stagnation, higher taxes, rising uncertainty, and a growing sense that something had gone badly wrong. This isn't a partisan hit piece. This is a forensic breakdown of how Labour blew a historic opportunity with the economy and why the consequences may last far longer than this parliament. If you are genuinely serious about understanding why the economy feels broken and what actually needs to change, watch this video all the way to the end. The final section explains the mistake almost nobody is talking about, and it changes everything. The impossible promise that set Labour up to fail. To understand where things went wrong, we need to start with Labour's central economic promise. They told voters three things at once: no new taxes on working people, falling debt over the parliament, higher spending on health, public sector pay, and long-term investment. On paper, it sounded sensible, reassuring even. In reality, it was an impossible trinity. You cannot meaningfully increase spending, reduce deficits, and freeze taxes unless economic growth explodes at levels last seen in the late 1990s. Growth that's strong doesn't just happen. It requires deep structural reform, political risk, and long-term vision. Labour had none of that built into their plan, and the moment the fiscal reality hit, everything started to unravel. Inflation's comeback and the interest rate trap. Those tax rises didn't land in isolation. They collided with higher wages, global trade tensions, rising tariffs, and surging energy costs. The result? Inflation reignited, climbing back up to 3.8%. That created two massive problems. First, the Bank of England lost any appetite for cutting interest rates. Britain was left with some of the highest borrowing costs in the G7, choking mortgages, business loans, and consumer spending. Second, higher inflation pushed bond yields up. That made government debt far more expensive to service. UK debt interest is now one of the largest single items of government spending. Labour promised to escape the fiscal squeeze, but their own policies tightened it instead. Uncertainty, the silent killer of growth. Here's where Labour arguably did the most damage. After the big tax rises, the Chancellor promised there would be no more. Almost nobody believed it. Why? Because the budget headroom was razor thin. A small dip in growth or a mild inflation shock could blow the numbers apart, and that's exactly what happened. U-turns on winter fuel payments and welfare reform didn't just save tiny amounts of money, they sent a danger signal. Nothing was settled. Businesses delayed investment. Buyers stayed out of the housing market. Households cut back spending, waiting for the next shock. This uncertainty became self-reinforcing. Weak growth forced more fiscal pressure, which increased speculation about future tax rises, which weakened growth even further. It was a vicious cycle, entirely of Labour's own making. Small cuts, big backlash, tiny savings. With a huge majority, Labour had political capital to spend. Instead, they chose the worst possible approach: salami slicing. Means testing winter fuel payments saved at best £1.5 billion. In a budget of over £2.5 trillion, the political damage was enormous. Inheritance tax changes targeting farmland alienated both farmers and pensioners, two of the most reliable voting blocs, while barely moving the fiscal needle. Here's the brutal irony. A one-penny rise in income tax would have raised £8.4 billion, more than all those controversial measures combined. Labour probably would have survived it politically if they'd been honest, fast, and decisive. Instead, they angered key voters and failed to fix the budget. The worst of both worlds. Structural weaknesses Labour refused to confront. Even beyond fiscal policy, deep economic problems remain untouched. Productivity continues to disappoint. The OBR has now downgraded long-term expectations, making future budgets even harder. Businesses complain regulation is strangling growth. Landlords warn rental reform risks, reducing housing supply. Developers face rising construction costs and slow approvals. The higher minimum wage has helped low-income workers, but risks pricing younger workers out of jobs and flattening wage progression. And then there's energy. UK industrial energy costs are among the highest in the world. Household bills remain among the highest in Europe, despite falling global oil and gas prices. This is the result of decades of policy failure, underinvestment, nuclear delays, complex subsidies, and rising transmission costs. Labor inherited the mess, but has so far avoided the hard reforms needed to fix it. So, is it really all Labor's fault? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The UK economy isn't a disaster. Growth is weak but positive. Unemployment is low by historical standards. Inflation may ease. Real wages have improved slightly. Savings are up. The economy is more like a vast ship carried by deep ocean currents. Governments can steer, but only partially. And labor has done some things right. Closer cooperation with Europe, a national wealth fund, green investment, training reform, and public sector pay uplifts. But leadership matters. Right now, the overwhelming narrative is one of drift, uncertainty, and missed opportunity. If labor is going to break manifesto commitments, they should do it once, clearly and decisively. End the uncertainty. Reset expectations. Stop pretending there's a painless path forward. And here's the bigger question no one wants to ask. Did labor box itself in by blindly accepting rigid fiscal rules and treating economic management as technocratic rather than strategic? Because without challenging that consensus, no amount of tinkering will deliver real change. If you care about the future of the economy, not just party politics, share this video, join the discussion in the comments, and subscribe for deeper breakdowns like this. Because the real danger isn't making mistakes, it's refusing to admit them and drifting without a destination.